So I got COVID and I'm stuck in quarantine. How the heck am I still going to practice photography? What's up, photography world? Joshua Grasso here from shutterschool.com. And yes, you heard that right. I am quarantined with COVID up in my home office, which is also my bedroom. So basically, I am living in here like my old college dorm room, and I am stuck with nothing to do. So I had to think, how can I make the most out of these next 5 days that I have left of quarantine? And so my biggest goal is to still get better at photography and make great content for you. So I came up with 7 ways that I'm going to practice over the next 5 days of quarantine and share those with you, so that if you're stuck in quarantine or you're just stuck at home and you want to practice photography, maybe you could take some of these ideas too. So let's get into it. So before we get to the first 7 things I'll actually do photography wise, I'm actually going to do one very important thing, or I have been doing one very important thing the first few days of quarantine, so that I can be free to be creative the rest of the time. And the first thing is clearing the table, is what I like to call it. So when you know you have a big project coming up and some creative things that you want to get done, sometimes what you need to do is figure out what's holding you back and what's stopping you from getting more accomplished to begin with, and get those out of the way. So one thing I needed to do was finish up a lot of my end of the year work, my end of the year editing, my archiving of all my weddings of this year and everything like that. So I'm clearing the table and trying to get all of that work done as fast as possible. I literally worked all day, every day at my computer the first few days of quarantine, so that I am good to go with all of my jobs that I needed to get done for 2020. And so now I have nothing left to do but let my mind be free to be creative. And so therefore I came up with these 7 ways that I'm going to continue to be creative whilst locked up in my bedroom office. So the first tip of how to make photos in quarantine is to think like a hacker. All right, be a photography hacker. And what that means is making the best out of what you have. And this is where you're going to have to think in creative ways of using what you have available. So it could be the lighting. So in my bedroom, I have a few windows, I have some curtains, so I can utilize that light somehow. Some creative things. I also have my handy dandy light wands, so maybe I can find some ways to do that. And try to invent your own interesting photography hacks, like using water bottles. I've been drinking lots of bottled water, so I have a bunch of water bottles sitting around. Maybe I can find a way to make something interesting using all these water bottles. So try to use your own. Don't just, look up photo hacks, but feel free to, copy some photo hacks. But more fun would be, look at what crap you're stuck with and can you make something out of it? So I'm going to try to make something using water bottles and the window light that I have in my room. The second tip is to think creativity through restriction. I actually want to make a whole separate video about this. This is something I've been thinking about a lot. And the concept here is that creativity comes through problem solving and restriction, because you're forcing yourself to have to come up with new ideas and new ways to shoot when you have very little to use. So the fact that I'm stuck in my bedroom is actually a freeing opportunity for me to think creatively, because I never would have thought to photograph in my bedroom before. Also, I don't have any clients, subjects to shoot. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to make photography where it's just me. So am I going to be making selfies? Am I going to maybe even do still life? I haven't done a still life photograph in years. So are there any interesting objects in my room that I can light and try to make some cool art out of? Also, maybe all your gear is stuck downstairs. So right now, all my gear is downstairs. I actually ordered some more from Aperture Rent to try out over Christmas break. And so I guess I'll have some new gear to play with in quarantine eventually. But for right now, all I have right now is the camera that I have hooked up to my computer to film these videos, and a cell phone. So creative restriction. Can I make awesome photos of myself using just a cell phone? That's my creative restriction. I'm going to have to find a way to try to make something interesting with that limited tool set. And then as I get more tools delivered to me later in the week, then maybe I'll be able to expand that a little bit. The third thing you can do is, I've already kind of mentioned it before, is focus on shooting objects. So if you're used to shooting people and landscapes, now is your chance to focus small. If you're in a small space, locked in a room, can you focus on shooting still life? And maybe that still life can simply be for practice. So if I want to practice lighting, I can set up a little object, or daughter left one of her dolls in here, so I could literally just practice on the doll, just seeing how the light shapes the face, things like that if I really wanted to. Or I could try to do something creative with art. I have some old cameras in here. Maybe I'll do some still life of a camera. So shooting objects is another way that you can practice. With the limited space, limited equipment, you only need a little bit of light to shoot a little still life. So perfect. So my objective is I'm going to try to make a cool picture of a camera using some good natural light, or my LED light wand. The fourth tip to being a photographer during quarantine is selfie extravaganza. All right, have fun taking selfies. I don't have a lot of pictures of myself, so now's the chance to shoot myself. And so maybe I'll come up with some ways to get better generic selfies with my phone that I can use in the future. Whenever I'm on location, I just need a quick shot of myself. I'll practice some different lighting hacks. Try to find ways to prop up the camera, see what kind of problem solving I'm gonna have to do in order to try to get unique, creative. I'm gonna try to set up a tripod to get some actual nice portraits when I'm actually trying to practice some techniques. The fifth thing to get better at photography while stuck in quarantine is to take some time for inspiration and planning. So I'm going to kind of break that into two things. So the first part, inspiration. So the first thing to find inspiration from is yourself, okay? So one of my clear the table roles was to go through all my work from this year and try to find my favorite photos. So as I dug through and say, these are my favorite 20 engagement photos of the year, and I'm going to share them with the world. But while digging through those, I can find some inspiration from looking at my own work and say, what things did I do well that was new that I want to incorporate as like a mainstay of my work? What are some things that, while looking at my work, I saw I didn't do good enough and I want to get better at? So as you dig in, try to come up with a list of flaws while reviewing your last year's work that you can use to guide you in your progress over the next week of studying and practicing. So one thing I don't do a lot of is using gels, so I want to get better at using gels. I also want to get better at posing in hard light. So if I get some hard sunlight coming through my window, I'm going to practice selfies looking into the light until I can find the perfect angles of photographing my face, and then hopefully that'll help me with photographing my clients. Maybe I'll practice using hard light with still life so I can get better at hard light. So that'll be one of my goals from looking at my work, is that I don't use a ton of hard light, and I would love to. Also, you can find inspiration from elsewhere. Now, I always want to be careful finding inspiration from other people because it feels like you just end up copying and then you're not really learning. But if you look at other photographers' work that inspires you, is there an element of their work that you can try to repurpose for yourself, or is it a technique that you can bring into your skill set so that you can make your own art out of it? For instance, Sam Hurd just posted a photo of a Indian bride, I believe, if I was remembering correctly, posing in front of a ring light, and it used this really flary effect and it looked really cool. And I don't want to copy that exact same shot, but maybe the idea of using flares from LED lights is a technique that I can practice. So I'm going to try to do some selfies with LED lights behind me and seeing what I can make that's my own photograph. And so that's using inspiration from another photographer. So as you look through other work, maybe a bullet point, one of the best ways of utilizing inspiration without copying is just to kind of, as you see photos, what kind of things do you think of instead of printing out photos? Make a bullet point list of ideas or techniques and stuff like that. So maybe you saw a photo that was really red and you're like, man, I really love how they used a red background. And so you just write red and then go from red to building your own photo. So when you go look back at your list, you have like cues to get your own thinking, and you might remember that photo exactly, or you might remember it a little differently, or you might interpret that word that you put on a list in your own way to make something new. So if I just write LED light, backlight, and then I start thinking LED backlight and dreaming of LED backlights, I'll come up with my own stuff, and I won't be necessarily copying Sam Hurd completely. The sixth thing to do is tied into that inspiration is actually planning and storyboarding some shoots. So while you're sitting there daydreaming, if I actually can't shoot, so if you're really stuck and you don't have any gear and you really can't shoot, what you can do is sit and draw down and brainstorm ideas. So make a list of techniques that you want to try. So I want to get better at gels, gelling backgrounds, gelling foreground objects. I never really gel foreground objects. So what I'm going to do with some still life practice in my bathroom and things is I'm going to practice gelling the walls to make a background for myself, for my selfies. And I'm going to practice gelling foreground elements to see if I can make a selfie with something as a foreground element that has got some gel on it. So that's an example of a list of techniques that you can practice. Now, if you come up with a list of techniques that you want to practice and you can't practice in your room, like I obviously can't gel couples, or if I want to practice doing sunrise portraits, and I really absolutely cannot do that, but through my inspiration, I have these ideas that I absolutely cannot try in quarantine. Make a list for what to do when you escape. So have your I survived quarantine list of techniques that you want to try in the future, and then feel free to actually storyboard them. So when I was teaching broadcasting to my middle school students, we practiced storyboarding and drawing out all of our shots for a shoot. So I started trying to do that for my photography sessions as well. That's something that you could do. So really, I am terrible at drawing, so my storyboards are absolutely awful, but it's about getting the concept out of your head on paper. I cannot draw. Here's an example. I was like, I want to do something cool with like silhouette. And so every time I go to a wedding, if I think of the scenery, then I say, what can I make with that scenery? And then you just kind of imagine in your brain, and then you draw it on a storyboard, draw it out with stick people, and draw out a map or a plan of what you can shoot when you escape quarantine. So for example, this, I was trying to think, how can I get layers? I want to get better at making layers of people with a couple. So having the bridal party in the background with CTO backlight, so that you cannot read my handwriting. I apologize. I'm a photographer because I cannot write or draw. I have the fine motor skills of the world's strongest man, but without the strength. So I'm like a caveman with a jumbo crayon when I try to draw. But anyway, so what I was doing here, I knew there was windows that were going to be warm at this venue, so I wanted to backlight bridal party with CTO flash, so they would all be standing out in silhouettes in the background, all symmetrical like, and then have the couple all posing together and have an assistant with the softbox lighting them up. So now I have this plan for a shot. Next time I'm at this venue, I'm going to be able to do this shot. I have a notebook full of storyboards to actually draw out so you can actually shoot when you escape quarantine. All right, lastly, I've made a whole list of ideas that I'm going to try when I escape quarantine. I've made a list of some ideas, selfies and gels and stuff that I'm going to try in my bathroom, in my bedroom while I'm stuck in quarantine. And I'm all out of shooting ideas and I still want to practice. What else can I do? I have one last awesome tip for you. I was super pumped. I was trying to find a way to storyboard better because my handwriting's so bad, and I stumbled across this Set-A-Light 3D software. So it's set.a.light 3D. They have two versions. They have like an $75, $80 basic version and $150-ish pro version. And what's awesome about this software is you can actually manipulate a whole bunch of actual studio lights, adjust the power, adjust the setup, see how they fall, and it's got a 3D rendering simulation of what that light will do to your subject. You can actually choose some model, and I'll do an in-depth review of this video as well, and that's one of my quarantine jobs. I'm going to learn how this software works and set up a whole bunch of setups that I can do for when I escape quarantine. So you can choose a model, you could choose your background paper, you could choose your lights. So for instance, if I want to add a ring flash, I can add it here. That's going to ruin the shot that I had set up, so I'm going to turn it off. But anyway, then you can see a preview through the camera. You can change the camera. You can do all sorts of stuff like that. And then you can view what your shot setup is going to look like. So you're stuck in quarantine. You can't get to your studio. You have a studio on your computer. You can manipulate a whole bunch of light setups. And then when you get the photo that you like, you could render it in high quality and then export it, and it'll give you what the shot will look like and what the lighting diagram will look like, so that when you leave, you'll know exactly what to do, and hopefully you'll have a stack of 5 to 10 shots that you can take after quarantine. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get a couple of headshot recipes, some different creative gel recipes that I'm gonna have ready to go, so that when I escape quarantine, I can hit the studio and be cooking with gas and make photos much faster than if I was down there playing around. So there you go. There's 7 different ways that I'm gonna be practicing photography over the next few days of quarantine. Hopefully at the end, I'll have some awesome work to show you, and then I'll show you an I survived quarantine video where I'll get to show off all the work I did playing around. So if you're stuck in quarantine because you got COVID, or you're just stuck at home like everybody else because you're trying not to get COVID, then now you have 7 ways to try to get better at photography. I'm gonna be trying them. You be trying them. We'll both get better together and end 2020 on a good note as better photographers. And the best thing you can do right now is to smash the like button. I believe, unscientifically, I think Dr. Fauci might have even said that smashing the like button and watching all my videos will cure me of COVID and make you a better photographer. So let's get after it. And as always, I'm Joshua Grasso, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.